I'm Wendie Cohick. I'm professor and chair of the Department of Animal Sciences at Rutgers University in New Brunswick, New Jersey. Well, I would say at the beginning of it all was my love of science, biology, and animals. I loved science, I loved biology in high school, and since I loved animals, it seemed like an obvious progression to going down the path of becoming a veterinarian. And that's actually what made me apply to the animal sciences department at Cornell University. Cornell has the only vet school in New York State, and my guidance counselor said, if you want to be a veterinarian, go to animal sciences at Cornell. So that's how I started there. And then I really was given the opportunity to do research at a relatively early point in my career as an undergraduate. And I also worked for a large and small animal veterinarian. And the veterinary medicine seemed relatively routine and uninteresting while I loved the research. So I realized I had the research bug. And from that point on, I followed my interest in research. So along my path of graduate education, I think during the end of my master's degree, I decided that I wanted to pursue a career in academic research and teaching. So at that point, I set out with every part of my plan aimed at getting me to that goal. And that's a very long and hard road to get to that point where you're considered competitive for academic tenure track positions. So I think I've been very directed with each phase of my career aimed at achieving the goal of receiving tenure at an academic university. And once I did achieve tenure, the next step was to get promoted to full professor. So I've always focused on that, and now I've achieved that. And so I'm at an interesting point in my career where I probably have another 10 to 15 years left in my career, and I'm really happy with where I'm at, because what I've realized is with all of the training that I have and all of the many different things I've done and the contacts that I've made, I actually have a lot of choices left in front of me. So unlike many people, many friends my age who are asking me when I'm retiring, my answer is, why would I retire? I really have a great job, I love what I do, and I have a lot of choices. And now I'm at the phase where I get to decide what I might want to do next. And that's why I took on the position of department chair, because that's a role where you can really exert leadership abilities and direct the future of the department and achieve things like sustaining an excellent academic program for undergraduates, as well as mentoring and helping my fellow colleagues, many of whom are junior faculty members. I don't think I really realized it at the time, but there were a lot of obstacles to being a woman in science. And I believe that a lot of those obstacles are still there. While more and more women are being trained in science at both the undergraduate and the graduate and the postdoctoral level, the ability to go all the way up the chain is harder and harder for women, which we see when we look at administration, department chairs, deans. Fewer and fewer of those positions are held by women. So I think when I say at the time I didn't realize it was an obstacle, really where it comes in, I was in especially in animal sciences, a very male-dominated field. And there's a lot of networking that goes on and opportunities to be given chances for exposure. Your mentor can't give an invited talk, so he asks one of the senior students in his group to go give that invited talk. And as I look back, and I look back with some of my female colleagues, we realize that those opportunities were given to the men more than they were given to us. Whether or not it's being invited over to the house for dinner with your mentor, or grabbing a beer after work, or the mentor pulling a bottle of scotch out of his bottom drawer and asking if you want to have a drink. How often is he going to do that with a female subordinate versus a male counterpart? So I think it's just men are comfortable with men. And the opportunities that come through networking are there for men and aren't there for women. And it is harder for a woman to get to the position that I'm in than a man. I'm especially proud of my mentoring record, especially with women. I've had approximately 15 graduate students in my lab. I'm proud of the fact that every one of them is still working in a science-related field, both men and women. And about 2/3 of my students have actually been women. And they're all still gainfully employed in science, some in industry and some in academia. They're doing cutting-edge research in cancer institutes. Several are now tenure-track faculty members at other institutions. And I'm really proud of that because I think it's really hard for women to advance in science. And many of the exceptional women that I've trained at some point in their careers doubted themselves. And they really needed someone to say, you can do this, and to really address the feminine traits that tend to make women less aggressive and less competitive in a very male-based scientific world. So I'm really proud of that, and I think it's something I've achieved, and I hope to be able to continue in the upper levels of administration to promote women in science. So my experience has all been in the world of academics, and I'm actually very concerned there because fewer and fewer women in their mid-20s are really choosing to go on in science because they see it that they have to make a choice between science and having a family life. I'm uncomfortable with the thought that I've had women see what I do at work and say they don't want to be like me. That's very unsettling, especially because I feel like I'm a good mentor. So what it says to me is that we need to really give substance to what we think we're saying, that it's okay for women to have both. And in academics, you're actually judged on how much you accomplish. And that usually comes down to how many peer-reviewed papers you've written and produced that have appeared in top quality journals, and how much data you've collected that's allowed you to go on and achieve grant support. And if you also have had a child during those years, even if your child has been healthy and you've had relatively few problems, that's really time away from your career. And there's nowhere on the resume that allows you to say, oh, and by the way, I had a child. If a female student has a child during graduate school and she takes a year longer to finish her studies than another student who didn't have a child, there's nothing that says, oh, she took an extra year because she had a child. So I think it's really going to be a struggle for us to figure out how we actually give women credit for being able to do two things at one time. I think there's two major changes that I'd like to see. One is that I'd like to actually see a formal mechanism whereby women on their CVs can indicate that they've had children or pursued, sometimes that's other things, taking care of an older parent or whatever, that if, somewhere where they can explain why they may have been a little bit less productive because they were basically holding down a second job. So I'd really like to see where people are really looking for that information, and perhaps most importantly, viewing that favorably, not viewing that like a handicap or, oh well, this person is just not as productive. I'd like those contributions to society to be regarded as positives, that a woman is able to handle those things and still remain productive in a formal setting such as a research environment. The second thing I'd like to see is I'd really like to see more women in positions at the top where they're making the choices about people to hire, and also maybe they're judging and evaluating performance, because those women who have gone through that themselves are more attuned to supporting women at the lower ranks. I'd really like to see women be able to succeed in science to the very upper levels and not stop or drop out, after they've done all the work of pursuing advanced degrees and additional research training. And, often what you see is what I've observed is often students will say, well, I think I'll just take a teaching position. And it's not that teaching isn't critical and teaching isn't very, very important. But I always say to them, do you really want to teach full-time, or are you doing that because you don't think you can do the research? And I want to hear more women say, I can do the research, and I'm going to go after that.